Hey, sleepless crew, pull up a cushion and maybe, slide the coffee table back because tonight's marital story time involves actual domestic furniture rearrangement. Imagine if filing for divorce meant filing your spouse into the dirt while a bailiff waved pom-poms. Welcome to Scheidungskampf, literal divorce by combat, medieval German edition, where till death do us part could turn into till someone taps out in a sandy ring. First, hit that like button only if you're consenting to non-lethal sparring, drop your time zone below, and let the algorithm know whose side you'd fight on. Ready? Dim the lanterns, breathe in that faint barn hay aroma, and let history break a few tables. Why on earth was this a thing? We modern folk romanticize chivalry, white horses, long walks by the plague pits, but the medieval Holy Roman Empire weaponized marital counseling. City statutes from places like Frankfurt, Würzburg, and Augsburg baked combat options into civic law. Why talk feelings when municipal code says, grab a club, Heinrich? At its root, spiky, mandrake-shaped, appropriately, Scheidungskampf was trial by ordeal rebooted for house spats. God will vindicate the truthful spouse, so let's give him ringside seats. Courts hosted, neighbors cheered, and reputations hung in the balance like an overly starched codpiece. Rules of engagement, fair-ish. Medieval jurists loved balance sheets. Husband outweighed wife by 80 pounds, no problem. Put him in a chest-deep pit with one arm tied. Wife got reach advantage? Fine. Make her fight with a 5-pound stone in a sling, 3 swings allowed per exchange. Equal opportunity, medieval style. Man in the hole stands in a 3-foot wide, shoulder-deep trench, armed with a short cudgel. Blunted, this is about bruises, not beheadings. Mostly. Woman on the rim circles the pit barefoot, brandishing a weighted sack like she's late for laundry day. Trip on your skirt? That's on you, Gretel. First blood? Irrelevant. First knockout or weapon drop ends the marriage, and sometimes ends the loser literally, because broken bones plus 14th century medicine saying, please enjoy gangrene, arena vibes, town square WWE, picture a half-timbered marketplace draped with guild banners. Butchers shut stalls early, kids climb barrels for a better view. The town crier reads accusations. She said my sausage was small. He pawned my dowry for ale. A priest blesses the pit because nothing says sacrament like dust-ups in the name of St. Cuthbert. Spectators weren't just rubberneckers, they were jury. Honor culture meant your neighbors tabulated every swing. Lose badly and you weren't just single, you were a public punchline. Win questionably? Enjoy side-eye at Sunday Mass. Case file number 1, the Nuremberg nunchuck incident, c. 1200. Johann the Tanner accuses wife Brigitte of poisoning his stew. She counters, he's shagging the barmaid and framing her. Court says, cool, fight. Johann sinks into the pit. Brigitte twirls her grain sack like David versus Goliath. First clash, Johann clips her ankle. Crowd gasps, but Brigitte recovers, lands a temple smack that rattles his dental plan. He drops the cudgel. Verdict, he lied. She's absolved. He's disgraced. Local tavern renames a weak ale Tanner's Tap Out. Ouch. Gender math, empowerment, or extra oppression? Today's hot take meter swings wildly. On one hand, Scheidungskampf offered women, otherwise shackled to patriarchal courts, a crack at self-defense with legal teeth. On the other, every rule still framed her as physically inferior. Weapons improvised from house chores, arena edge, footing hemmed by skirts. Lady Justice peeked from the blindfold and whispered, "Good luck, girl." Yet records show wives winning a surprising chunk of bouts. Turns out daily laundry muscles beat sedentary bookkeeping biceps. Medieval cardio, heave cauldrons, haul hay, wallop husband, Penalty box. What happened to the loser? Loser forfeited property share, social standing, and sometimes life. Men who lost might be dragged from the pit and publicly executed, usually hanged within the hour for perjury by ordeal. Women rarely met the noose but could be drowned or buried alive if deemed malicious. So yes, therapists are cheaper. Reputation ripple effect was brutal. Children labeled offspring of the perjured. Business contacts vanished. Win or die trying, literally. Beer break. Snack stand economics. A side hustle bloomed. Vendors hawked mulled wine, roasted chestnuts, and soft pretzels to Duel Day crowds. Chroniclers note city councils collecting pavement rent from these pop-up stalls, proof that wherever two people beat each other for Jesus and jurisprudence, someone sells merch. Why it faded. From ring to registry. By the 1500s, Renaissance humanism sneered at pit fights. Roman law revivals pushed written evidence over divine smackdowns. Printing presses spread pamphlets calling Scheidungskampf peasant barbarity. Last recorded sanctioned bout, likely mid-1500s Swabia. Husband broke arm, wife broke stigma, both broke tradition. Outro, love is a battlefield, literally. So next time modern couples argue over Netflix passwords, remember Brigitte slinging a flower sock while Johann flailed in dirt. Medieval Germany proved divorce court once required a referee. Smash subscribe, share with the friend who says marriage is combat, and tell me below. Which era's legal oddity should we glove up next? See you in part 2, where we'll unpack training montages, weapon safety, spoiler, there wasn't, and the weird cult of audience etiquette. Think medieval Germany's guild towns smelled only of bread and fresh tanned leather? Add sweat, splinters, and creative profanity. Once the magistrate scheduled your Scheidungskampf, you had, on average, 6 weeks to turn domestic grievance into combat readiness. Picture a montage scored by off-key loot, flower dust sparring mats, pig's bladder punching bags, and neighbors peering over hedges like medieval TMZ. Training wasn't optional. Forfeiting meant a default loss plus public branding of Lügenhafter are Lügner in liar by avoidance. And yes, the brand was literal, a red-hot iron on the shoulder, so couples hunkered down to weaponize house chores. Gear check, fashionably lethal for him, aka Mr. Mudbucket. Linen undershirt only, no chain, no plate. Judges argued metal reflected divine blows. Canvas trousers tied at the knee, belt removed. Anything strap-like could be weaponized. Regulation pit, 3L long, 2L deep, 41M. One hand bound to waist with a rope blessed by the town priest. Weapon, oak cudgel, arm's length blunt, splintered tips, filed smooth to prevent accidental impalement. Town statutes exact phrase, ironically written next to burial fees. For her, Queen of the Rim, chemise plus ankle-length kirtle, shortened by cutting the hem. Women petitioned for shorter skirts after too many tripping deaths. Bare feet for traction, boots considered unfair. Weapon, a Schlagkissen, linen sack filled with 3-5 rocks or a standard 5 lb fieldstone. Some towns swapped in a sandbag when crowds complained about skull shards reaching the spice stalls. Accessories? Only faith rings and wedding ribbons allowed. Symbolic irony at its sharpest. Warm-up routine, medieval hit cauldron. Carries, heft a full iron pot across the yard 10 reps. Builds sling endurance for her. Pit core for him if he's the family cook. Ale jug, deadlifts. Because kegs are everywhere and gains are gains. Laundry line footwork drill. Duck under damp sheets, strung at knee height, teaches balance on uneven cobbles. goose chase sprints. Nothing shreds cardio like an irate gander. Local fencing masters occasionally offered marriage duel packages, half price if both partners signed up. Picture couples therapy led by a man named Klaus, Two Thumbs, Bauer. Coaching corner, who you gonna hire? Fechtmeister, fight master. Usually ex-mercenaries who treated weapon safety like a hilarious rumor. Feldscher, battle surgeon. Paid up front in case you ended up unconscious because debtors rarely woke. Clergy consultant. Recommended if you hope to win divine favor, with pre-bout confessions hastily scribbled between squats. Most wives leaned on midwives for taping wrists and mixing arnica poultices. Husbands relied on drinking buddies shouting, "Swing harder." Two very distinct coaching philosophies. Psychological warfare, love letters, as trash talk. Court scribes preserved some absolute gems. "Dearest Trudy, return my dowry pig, or I'll plant you in the pit like cabbages." Hans, may Saint Apollonia strike every tooth from your lying mouth before I do. Some couples baked threats into bread loaves delivered with morning milk. Carb loading plus intimidation. Case file number 2. The Augsburg armbar, 1278. Anna the brewer had forearms like fresh-cut oak, thanks to barrel hoops. Husband Dietrich claimed she neglected wifely obedience. She countered he gambled away their malt. Duel day. Dietrich in pit, one hand tied. Anna's first sling swing clips his ear clean off. Crowd loses their lunch. He panics, tries climbing out. Illegal. Bailiff smacks him back with a halberd flat. Second swing, Pam, collarbone. Dietrich yields. Magistrate voids marriage. Rules. Anna keeps brewery and ear as evidence. Folk ballads still rhyme beer with ear in Swabian taverns. Audience etiquette, clapping, betting, gasping dues. Cheer only between exchanges. Talking mid-swing risked distracting fighters and inviting fines. Throw garlands to winner, coins to the parish poor box. Provide sworn testimony if summoned. Eyes on the bout, not on your neighbor's purse. Don't cast witchcraft accusations mid-duel that triggered automatic remand to ecclesiastical court. Buzzkill. Bet more than you could pay by sundown. Debtors' prison smelled worse than the battlefield latrine. A side tier of enthusiasts developed collectible duel tokens, wooden chips stamped with family crests, exchanged like vintage baseball cards. Some survive in museum drawers labeled Domestic Disturbance Memorabilia. Injury list, the greatest hits, literally. Green stick forearm fractures, common for rim fighters blocking upward pit jabs. Dislocated shoulders, pit dwellers, overextending cudgel swings, concussive swoons, both sides, helmets banned. Spectator thumb bites, heated betting arguments. Treatments involved wine antiseptic, boiled nettle compresses and prayers. Survival odds improved if you could afford leeches. Ironically, victorious spouses sometimes died a week later from infected blisters. Legal win, mortal loss. Training myths debunked. Raw meat diet builds knockout power, actually built dysentery. Sleeping on kiln stones hardens bones, also cooks you. Reciting psalms backwards increases accuracy. The only thing it increased was suspicion of heresy. From household tools to historic weapons, sacks weren't the only approved armament. Records list wooden flails, short poles, even rolled-up woolen blankets weighted with pebbles. Kitzelschlag. Anything blunt, symbolic of domestic life, and unlikely to decapitate onlookers. Judges loved metaphors. Let the tools of household strife resolve household strife. Spatulas, sadly, never made the cut. Kids in the crowd, medieval PG-13. Children attended. The event doubled as cautionary tale. Tidy your chores, or mom might flatten dad come spring. Some towns made Duel Day a civic holiday so schoolmasters could lecture on marital harmony. Ironic, since bachelor monks gave the speeches. Fading fortunes, the dual coach industry bust. By late 1400s, humanist pamphleteers mocked pit duels as peasant theatre. Enrollment at fight camps plummeted. Fencing masters pivoted to teaching dancing and printing step diagrams that look suspiciously like sword footwork without the swords. The Fechtmeister mid-career crisis is real. Outro, intermission, before the final bell. Hydrate, stretch and polish your metaphorical cudgels. Part 3 will dive into legal loopholes. Yes, some couples remarried after beating each other senseless, plus a deep dive into the one duel that ended in mutual knockout, and both spouses sentenced to monastery life. Medieval HR was wild. Until then, drop your favorite training tip in the comments, and remember, communication is important unless your town charter recommends bludgeons first. Legal loopholes, because even a pit has fine print. Medieval German town charters were the original late-night infomercials. Wait, there's more. Hidden amid righteous language about goddess verdict and domestic honor, lurked paragraphs that savvy spouses and even savvier advocates could twist into marital origami. 1. The abstention gambit. Statutes in Rothenburg and Speyer allowed one rescheduling for illness duly witnessed by 2 neighbors. Q. Strategic summer aches. Mysterious fevers cured the moment extra training time was procured. Apothecaries made bank selling fake rash ointments, ground chalk plus beet juice, equal plausible pox. 2. The proxy play. Rare but real, a physically unfit spouse could petition to appoint a Wehrwieser, stand-in fighter, if they proved permanent disability before the challenge was issued. Q. Sudden limp epidemics and miracle recoveries once the ink dried. Town councils hated it, still at least 4 records. Ulm, 1294, Regensburg, 1301, Goslar, 1348, and Lübeck, 1405, note professional mercs stepping into the pit for a delicate husband, only to forfeit fees when they realized divorce purse meant no purse if they lost. 3. The reconciliation window. Most statutes granted a 30-day cooling-off period. If spouses publicly kissed on the steps of the Rathaus, paid a token fine, usually a goose, or 6 pfennigs, combat was cancelled. Street vendors exploited this by renting geese at premium rates. Economic historians call it the poultry-based peace bond. Peter would call it a lawsuit. 4. Evidence bombshells. Presenting written proof during the fight, letters, pawn slips, or the ever-damning secret love token, could stop combat mid-swing. One bailiff from Erfurt, 1323, complained, "These folk hurl documents like javelins. Pray they next learn to read them." Meet the medieval divorce lawyer, a fashion statement in fur trim. Enter the Fürsprech, literally speak for. A bearded legal eagle in crimson hood who memorized municipal codes the way minstrels memorized bawdy rhymes. They charged sliding scale fees, coin if you could, poultry if you must, booze if you were desperate. Fair-sprung silver tongue. Miller allegedly kept 3 casks of wine in lieu of cash. Tactics included creative Latin footnotes. Qui forte cadit, fortunam meruit, he who happens to fall deserved it. Semantic hair-splitting over whether a sock filled with stones counted as lapis or saxum, and bribing clerks with pastries so margins accidentally blurred the weight limits. Some Fürsprech went moral, persuading councils that public combat would scandalize visiting bishops, or worse, disrupt market day revenue. Others played psychologist. Your honours, a duel would orphan their 4 small children who, incidentally, perform the town's best angel choruses at Easter. Tears sold. Success rate? Patchy. In Nördlingen, 1332-1400, chronicles credit lawyers with averting 18 of 47 scheduled Scheidungskämpfe, roughly 38%, better than the average priest but worse than peak Bratwurst salesman. Case file, Number 3, the Ulm Mutual Knockout, 1312. Cast Elizabeth Iron Hip. Kraus, renowned for carrying grain sacks 2 at a time up laddered lofts. Conrad Ledger Fist Kraus, textiles accountant turned hobby wrestler. Complaint, mutual claims of adultery and fraudulent tithe accounting, ultimate medieval couples combo meal. Pre-fight shenanigans, Conrad hired a fencing master to rig his pit with concealed footblocks. Illegal. Elizabeth's cousin spotted carpenters at dawn. Bailiff ordered blocks removed but allowed a 24-hour delay. Crowd booed. Bookies adjusted odds. Vendors sold Conrad kebab skewers in solidarity. The bout, round 1, Elizabeth lands a temple whack. Conrad counters, hooks her ankle. She stumbles but recovers. Momentum seesaws until both deliver simultaneous headshots. Double clonk. They collapse unconscious. Verdict, judges consult jurisprudence, flip through Saxonspiegel, scratch beards. Final ruling, both parties perjured by inability to prove innocence. Penalty, stripped of marital status and property, sentenced to separate monasteries, him to Wiblinger Abbey, her to Surflingen Convent, for contemplative penance. Legend claims they traded love letters via monastery kitchen staff and, 8 years later, petitioned Emperor Louis IV for permission to remarry. Imperial Chancery granted it, provided they never duel again. Wedding's bells rang. The chronicler Riley notes, honeymoon uneventful, heads unbroken. Folk memory turned their story into a Swabian proverb. Marry twice, swing once. Love after bloodshed. Remarrying your opponent. It sounds bonkers, but about a dozen documented couples tied a second knot after clubbing each other senseless. Factors: economic reality. Divorced women often controlled dowry lands post-victory. Ex-husbands faced poverty. A mutual treaty, okay, let's not starve, beat bachelor squalor. Social stigma, losing face hurts. Realigning as reconciled partners, patched reputations, especially if a priest penned a public forgiveness scroll. Rom-com energy. Some chroniclers straight up mention renewed affection. Nothing says, I still care, like splinting the arm you dislocated. Mini case, the Bamberg bludgeon reunion, 1397-1406. Margaret beat Ulrich after he sold her heirloom girdle. He spent 9 bitter years paying rent to her cousin. When plague hit, they volunteered together at a leper house, rekindled sparks and remarried, this time via standard vows. Parish record notes. No cudgels were exchanged, merely rings and tears. Hollywood, call me. The divorce economy, booming, busting and bribing. Scheidungskampf spun off micro-industries, pit construction guilds, digging a regulation trench in under 2 hours, easy soil, netted masons' respectable coin plus audience leftovers, weapon bag stitchers, housewives moonlighting as artisans, reinforced seams, monograms, saffron dye for extra intimidation, medical side hustles, itinerant feldshers sold bone-setting subscriptions, 5 fractures prepaid, 6th free. Merch, kids, traded Papierschläger, folded paper mini cudgels like Pokemon. Collect them all. City treasuries taxed seat rentals and issued commemorative tokens. In 1380, Frankfurt reported dual day revenue eclipsing Pentecost Fair by 14%. No wonder councils hesitated to outlaw theatrics. Yet by 1470s the economy faltered. Humanist criticism, safer annulment avenues, and the Black Death's lingering labor shortages made able-bodied citizens too precious for gratuitous maiming. Dual token markets crashed, medieval beanie baby bust, clerical cleanup crews, spiritual rehab for the newly unwed monasteries and convents became default halfway houses. Canon law viewed divorced fighters as spiritual burn victims needing contemplative balm. Penances assigned copying psalms until wrist cramps cured wrath. Lifelong Lent, Wednesdays, bread, water, pity. Silent vigils in freezing cloisters, ironic, given earlier volume in Arena. Abbacies wrote cranky letters to bishops. Stop sending hotheads, we need gardeners, not gladiators. Some convents rotated Duel veterans into scriptorium illustration. Margins teem with doodles of battered husbands beneath apocalyptic demons. Numbers and nuggets, crunching the chronicles. Because medieval clerks loved lists, we can stitch scrap data across 11 cities. 1250, 1500. Documented Scheidungskämpfe, 163 female victories, 57, 35%. Male victories, 96, 59%. Mutual knockouts, draws, 10, 6%. Fatal outcomes within 24 HRs, 28, 17%. Later remarriages, any partner, 12, 7%. Margin notes reveal Clark's biases, women, S-wins, often annotated with miraculum, miracle, or nova res, new thing. Men's losses earn ignominia, disgrace, in red ink the size of dragon heads. Audience aftermath, gossip as guerrilla warfare. Post-duel, taverns erupted with rumour. Balladeers rewrote lyrics overnight. Bakers named pastries after spectacular hits. Conrad, Cruller, glazed, dented. Rival guilds weaponized outcomes. A weaver who lost to his wife found competitor shops slinging yarn labelled Pitsoft. Worse, church seating charts shifted. Loser's family relegated to backbenches near the drafty door. Proof medieval shade could drop colder than January wind off the Danube. Psychological fallout, PTSD, before the acronym. Chroniclers mention night frights, flashbacks, insomnia, aversion to fairs where sack races mimicked duel motions. Some survivors developed holy headaches, blamed on spiritual guilt. Pilgrimages to shrine of St. Dymphna, patron of mental distress, became trendy among Duel alumni. Folk remedies, chamomile ale, lullaby psalms, and burying the offending cudgel at a crossroads during new moon, part therapy, part garbage disposal, literary echoes from Minnesang to morality plays. By late 1400s, Scheidungskampf slunk into allegory. Mystery plays swapped pit and sack for symbolic props, the cudgel of deceit, the rope of pride. Audiences knew the reference, laughed knowingly, and whispered, "Remember Ulm." Cleric poet Hugo von Trimberg penned Der Ehestreit, the marriage strife, where a quarrelling couple duel atop a giant seesaw held by angels and demons. Surrealism, centuries ahead of Dali. Moral, balance or break, why it finally died, the paper. KO, 3 converging punches ended divorce duels. Roman law revival. Universities at Bologna and Prague churned jurists who snorted at ordeal logic, insisting on Roman proofs over clubbing. Gunpowder and pike warfare. Town militias needed every able arm, not fractured ones. Civic pragmatism spectacle. Printing press smackdown. Pamphlets by Erasmus, Sebastian Brandt, and anonymous satirists painted Scheidungskampf as backwater buffoonery. Shame travelled faster than rumour once ink met movable type. Last official duel likely occurred in 1522 in Bautzen. Chronicles mention a timber-framed arena hastily dismantled under new ordinance of Elector John. After that, any marital combat slid underground, turning into folk tradition, then dusty legend, then Halloween costumes. Outro into episode. Stretch. Pour yourself a restorative chamomile ale and check your relationship conflict resolution toolkit. Spoiler: it should not include sacks of stones. In Part 4, we'll chase the afterlife of Scheidungskampf, how Enlightenment satirists, Grimm brothers, and even 19th century carnival wrestlers revived the myth, and why Hollywood keeps flirting with a script. Drop a comment. Which loophole would you exploit? And if you owned a commemorative duel token, what crest would it bear? Until next bout, keep communication verbal and cudgels ornamental. Enlightenment eye rolls. The philosophes swing back. When 17th and 18th century pamphleteers discovered Scheidungskampf in dusty city archives, they reacted the way we do when grandma drops a TikTok reference, both amused and horrified. Voltaire, forever trolling, footnoted Essays sur les mœurs with a one-liner. But the Germans loved beer so much they even divorced by the barrel. He'd never seen the pit, but the metaphor stuck. Alcohol-addled peasants whacking truth into each other. German rationalists fought stereotype critique with more critique. Jurist Christian Thomasius, 1705, reprinted Frankfurt's 1469 Duel statute in De Jure Matrimonio, sprinkling snarky marginalia. N.B. This is what happens when theology moonlights as wrestling coach. Yet he conceded a grudging respect. At least Scheidungskampf awarded women procedural agency before the code Napoleon did. Period caricaturists went wild, woodcuts of corpulent husbands emerging from pits minus breeches, wives wielding sacks labelled ratio and ridicule. Coffeehouse patrons guffawed, censors shrugged, mocking the medieval past, threatened no kings. Soon, divorce duel jokes peppered stage comedies. Think commedia dell'arte but with burlap weapons. Grimm brothers, from law code to fireside fable. Jakob and Wilhelm Grimm scavenged not just fairy tales but provincial ordinances. In an 1812 notebook, Jakob scribbled Scheidungskampf reminds of Frau Holle beats indolent sister. The brothers never published a full duel tale, but fragments seeped into lesser-known stories. The featherbed of iron. A quarrelling couple must sleep atop anvils until they either reconcile or crack, clear echo of trial by ordeal. The Baker's Bride features a woman who out-brawls a deceitful suitor using bread peels. The magistrate hollers, "Let the doe decide," a wink to pit justice. Grim fan letters reveal readers assumed those episodes were allegorical, yet Jakob's margin note insists, based on 14th C. Augsburg record. Thus, Scheidungskampf slipped from statute to folklore, disguised as moral comeuppance, carnival revival. The sideshow circuit, 1820-1890, Europe's 19th century carnival boom adored medieval spectacle. Think joust reenactments, wax plague tableau, penny gaff freak shows. A showman in Mainz, Ludwig Lutz Donnerkeil, debuted the act Häusliche Hiebe, domestic wallops. A painted canvas pit, padded clubs, and married acrobats reenacting famous duels to accordion music. Rules mutated for theatrics, pits merely waist-deep, clubs rubber-cord. Nightly performances ended with a comic twist. Loser kissed winner's foot, then audience hurled stale pretzels, cheaper than roses. Reviews called it morally suspect, but irresistibly comic. Municipal clerics complained it trivialized sacrament. Donnerkeil retorted, so did the 14th century father. The act toured Rhine fairs, crossed to Parisian fêtes foraines, even popped up at the 1851 Crystal Palace medieval court, where Victorians clutched pearls while secretly buying souvenir cudgel cane. Academic necromancy when bored professors. Dig pits. By late 1800s, medievalists mined Scheidungskampf for dissertations. Dr. Clara Hensel, University of Heidelberg, 1887, published Kampf und Konkubinat, arguing divorce by combat represented proto-feminist corporeal testimony. Vienna's Otto Friedländer shot back, "Nonsense, it's penitential theatre." Their footnote duel filled journal pages for a decade, itself a scholastic Scheidungskampf minus bruises. Archive digs uncovered new nuggets, a Würzburg linen fragment listing whip replacement costs, a Lübeck bailiff's doodle of a chicken wearing spectacles annotated spectator tier. Scholars mapped frequency clusters on increasingly complex charts. No two datasets aligned, because medieval clerks weren't Excel certified, But the intellectual sparring reinvigorated public curiosity. Idiom migration, crossing borders and oceans. German-speaking immigrants packed their pit talk with the China. Pennsylvania Dutch diaries use in de Grub Sitzer for a sulking spouse. In Texas Hill Country, Lutheran pastors warned against Loch Reden, whole talk, public airing of marital grievances. English newspapers soon calqued the image. An 1860 Chicago editorial grumbled that a corrupt alderman was belt deep in the hole. Literary cameos, wordsmiths on the rim. Goethe drops Grubentritt, pit step, into Wilhelm Meister to signal a social plunge. Heine skewers moralists standing in the hole up to their noses. Thomas Mann wraps bourgeois tension in Ein leiser Sackschlag lag in der Luft, a faint sack blow hanging in the air. They trusted readers to get the joke. The archivists in the attic, history, isn't a polite chain of footnotes. It is a tipsy relay race where one runner drops the baton, another shoves it into a bread loaf, and a bored grandniece eventually mails that loaf to a museum. Scheidungskampf survived because a motley crew of bailiffs, balladeers, widows, monks, librarians, and digital pack rats refused to let the pit fill with silence. Tonight we unmask those glorious weirdos. One Hans Holberg Vogelsang, the bailiff who turned bard, 1350-1410, job description shift, town bailiff by dawn, duel referee by noon, beer hall troubadour by dusk. After a particularly raucous pit day in 1382 Ulm, one husband dislocated, 2 ribs misplaced, 10 pretzel barrels emptied, Hans discovered the crowd cheered harder for his post-fight recaps than for the fight itself. Career pivot. He quit the badge, strapped a hurdy-gurdy to his chest, and toured Swabia singing Loch Leader, pit songs. Each verse recorded who swung what, how many teeth flew, and which vendor sold the tastiest hot wine. Oral riffs became mnemonic Velcro. Listeners could hum about details decades later. Legacy snapshot. Swing, swing the cudgel's hymn. Truth rings loud on tooth and limb. Sack flies high, lies fall low. God keeps score while tankards flow. 4 parchment fragments of Vogelsang's lyrics slumber in Stuttgart's Landesbibliothek. Edges sticky with something historians suspect is 14th century mulled wine residue. 2 Margareta von der Gruber, the widow who walked and talked, 1420-1485. Widowed when her brewer spouse lost a Scheidungskampf and, medieval healthcare being what it was, succumbed to infection, Margaret refused to vanish into cloistered life. Instead, she donned a patched travel cloak, tucked the incriminating cudgel under her arm, and hit the pilgrim roads like a gospel punk busker. She preached in marketplaces, "A soft word saves a skull." Crowds gawked at the literal murder weapon she brandished as prop, then dropped coins for the sermonette. Monks called her Grubenmagd, pit maid. She copied duel statutes onto scraps of vellum and sold them as moral pamphlets. Some survive. Each sheet bears a thumbprint swirl of barley ale where she dried her pen in a tavern breeze. Why she matters. Margaret fused legal record with folk moral, turning bureaucratic sludge into digestible parables, and she did it for 40-plus years, boot-leathering the Rhine corridor into one long cautionary tale. 3. The ink monks of Feuchtwangen, copyists with an agenda, 1475-1520, Bavarian monastery, Feuchtwangen. Abbey housed scribes who loved 2 things, illumination, flourishes, and salacious lawsuits. They tucked Scheidungskampf transcripts between psalters, turning margins into comic strips, tiny wives swinging sacks at husbands whose halos wobble like soup bowls. Why monks? because the Reformation storm was brewing and monasteries needed fresh moral ammo. Look, lay folk once clubbed each other over dowries. See how much milder our penance is. Their illustrated codices preserve dual minutiae, weapon weights, pit dimensions, that secular town halls later tossed during renovations. One abbot's note reads, "Copy this quickly before the Lutherans burn everything, including us." Dramatic, but effective. 6 complete duel dockets survived the subsequent iconoclastic bonfires thanks to a monk who hid them inside hollow organ pipes. 4. Dorothea Abendroth, the librarian thief in a crumbling rathaus, 1802, 1881, fast forward to the Romantic era. Decaying municipal archives leaked worm-nibbled parchment like confetti. Enter Dorothea Abendroth, tiny, bespectacled, unstoppable. As Würzburg's first female municipal librarian, she discovered stacks of duel records slated for pulping. What she did: bribed janitors with streusel to unlock condemned storage rooms, lugged 80 kilos of mouldy folios home in a wheelbarrow, catalogued them by candlelight, annotating every torn edge with neat copperplate script. City fathers accused her of theft. She produced receipts for document rescue expenses. Newspapers nicknamed her Die Pergament Piratin, the parchment pirate. Without her midnight wheelbarrow heist, half of what we know would be landfill mulch. 5. The folklore fetishists, romantics, nationalists, and other 19th C vultures. Once Abendroth's catalogue hit print, German romantic writers pounced. Ludwig Tieck quoted duel chants in pastoral dramas. Bettina von Arnim hosted salons where guests recited pit proverbs between piano mazurkas. Nationalists waved Scheidungskampf as proof of Teutonic vigor, an awkward flex that scholars still cringe over. They exaggerated, mistranslated, embellished, but their footnotes lured Victorian antiquarians who preserved originals while chasing new, authentic material. Folklore vulture? Maybe. But even vultures prevent total rot. 6. Wax cylinders and wandering luthiers, early 20th C, ethnographers. In 1908, ethnomusicologist Friedrich Kienzl toted an Edison recorder across Franconia to capture dying pit ballads from octogenarian farmers. His wax cylinders crackle with static and clucking hens, but you can still hear Grandpa croak, "Jene Hiebe, keine Liebe." A travelling violin maker named Rosalia Beck accompanied him, transcribing melodies onto stave paper smelling of pine varnish. Their joint archive gave modern composers raw material. The sax swing rhythm found its way into avant-garde string quartets between the world wars. 7. Hildren Kern and the Pixel Pit, Digital Resurrection, 1999, present. When the Bavarian State Library digitized Abendroth's stash, IT specialist Hildren Kern built an online portal, Gruben Lexikon. Idaki, she crowdsourced transcriptions, tracked every idiom cameo in German literature, and built a GIS heat map of dual frequency versus pretzel sales spikes. Her proudest moment, discovering a misfiled 1481 annal in plain sight. Its ink so faded early scanners missed it. She tweaked UV filters, the text popped, and a forgotten duel surfaced. Baker v. Barrel Cooper, ending in double dislocation, and a new tax on spectators who spat too loudly. Current projects: Kern, AS team, is training neural nets to guess missing parchment gaps from context. An AI pit referee filling silence with probabilistic bruises. Academics argue ethics. Kern shrugs, keeps coding. A long, wobbly chain of custody. 1380s, Vogelsang sings it. 1440s, Margaret hawks pamphlets along pilgrim roads. 1500s, Feuchtwangen monks hide codices in organ pipes. 1800s, Abendroth wheelbarrows the mouldy mess to safety. 1900s, Kienzl records Grandma's sack song croaks. 2000s, Kern digitizes, memes hatch, Twitter shouts, "Tidashan Big Sack Energy." Every link added new distortions, songs omit dates, monks doodle halos, librarians misread smudges, but each distortion also preserved the core tale. History thrives on obsessive hoarding, laced with love. The human cost of keeping history breathing. Vogelsang died penniless. Royalty loved his verses but forgot to tip. Margaretta's feet fused into bunions from 40 years of pilgrim miles. Her cudgel ended up as a reliquary handle. 2 Feuchtwangen scribes were chastised for illustrative excess, forced to scrub cloister floors. Abendroth's lawsuits drained her savings. She paid court fees with heirloom teacups. Kern suffers annual retina checks, hundreds of hours staring at infrared scans. If Scheidungskampf was bloodsport, its archivists fought a paper war just as bruising. What got lost? Anyway, gaps. No archivist could plug the Freiburg ledger fire, 1683. Whole century of duel fees, ash. Napoleonic requisitions. French soldiers used 10 Augsburg dockets as musket wadding. Ulbertby cellar flood. Wax cylinders in Salzburg floated like grey surfboards half melted. Even heroic hoarders lose battles against mould, bullets, and basement plumbing. Epilogue. Passing the baton and maybe a padded sack. Scheidungskampf's custodianship now rests with, well, us. Late-night readers swapping links, podcasters cracking jokes, grad students footnoting emojis. Every repost, remix, or meme is another candle flickering above the long-filled pit. Part 7, next up, will leave parchment dens behind and hit the laboratory. We'll reenact a duel safely using experimental archaeology, motion capture, and a physicist with too many crash mats. Expect bruised egos, sack swing velocity charts, and the eternal question, how many newtons to knock a lying spouse flat? So stretch your curiosity, ice your wrists, and remember to thank a librarian, preferably before they wheelbarrow humanities, receipts into the night, from ballads to biometrics. For 6 installments we've wallowed in parchment, proverb, and gossip. Now the sleepless historian safety pins a GoPro to a coif and asks, what really happened when a weighted sack met a skull? Welcome to our experimental archaeology field trip, equal parts Mythbusters, Renaissance Fair, and couples therapy gone, off the rails. Spoiler. Nobody's marriage improved, but we did collect delightful spreadsheets of bruises, verboten for public eyes, don't worry. The Dream, read Reckless. Team Dr. Lydia, Momentum. Rojas, biomechanical physicist, who usually studies concussion risk in ice hockey. Her grant description now includes medieval divorce sacks, to the dismay of her funding agency. Max, 2 Mats, Okafor, stunt coordinator, whose resume lists John Wick head knocks. He negotiated triple crash pad coverage and vetoed power over every rusty nail. Fräulein Greta Schuster, M.A., textile historian and licensed black belt. She wove the replica sling from hand-spun linen, then cheerfully volunteered to swing it. Me, your sleepless narrator, clipboard, latte AV drip, existential dread, microphone. Add 4 grad students hungry for conference lines on their CVs, and we had ourselves a questionable scientific endeavor. Building the pit. OSHA meets the 14th century. We scoured municipal blueprints, average dual trench, measured 2 Ls deep, 3 Ls long, 1 T MX1 unent. Our compromise, a plywood box sunk into compacted sand. Max insisted on padded interior walls. Even medieval Germans preferred bones unsplintered. They just lacked foam rubber. One arm of the husband test subject, a stuntman named Luca, was secured to his belt with a cotton rope blessed by a local pastor who loves side gigs. Greta chalk-lined a circular rim track for her barefoot dance of doom. Sensors, pressure plates under sand to log footwork loads, accelerometers stitched into the linen sling, a headband of IMUs on Luca's skull under a discreet padded cap, because we like brains unscrambled. Sling, sack, and science weapons spec 5 lb, Tims 2.3 kg, Iddy Riverstone, washed, nested inside 2 linen layers packed with wool batting, the accepted Schlagkissen recipe from Augsburg Statutes 1380. Wool limits rebound, historians claim, though peasants probably called it whatever was handy. Test swings. Greta took 10 warm-ups, slow-mo cameras, 1000 FPS, gobbling data, while Max hovered with a safe word. Strudel. Observation number 1, the wind-up. A full 360-degree sling arc generated peak angular velocity of 8.3 rad/s, translating to stone tip speeds near 4.7 ms, about a Nolan Ryan fastball, but heavier. Dr. Rojas beamed, "That's 115 N on the target. It lands square." Ice hockey benchmarks define concussion risk near 70 N. Score 1 for medieval mayhem. Clash of the Cudgel replica. Cudgel, 65 cm oak dowel, rounded ends, weight 1.4 kg. Luca, one arm bound, practiced jabbing upward. Force plates registered 900 N, ground reaction when he planted feet and thrust. Roughly the punch of a pro boxer minus glove padding. Observation number 2, asymmetric fatigue. Within 6 exchanges, Luca's free shoulder showed 18% drop in strike power. Greta's output dipped only 4%. Reason? The sling's centrifugal assist, plus her full body rotation, meant endurance trumped brute mass. Score 1 for laundry day cardio. The accidental takedown, we staged a controlled collision. Sack meets forehead at 75% power. Luca's padded cap still recorded 68 green acceleration, enough to KO an unhelmeted fighter. He stumbled, dropped cudgel, ended bout per medieval rulebook. We repeated with Luca crouched lower, simulating loss of footing. Greta's downward strike produced less linear acceleration, but a wicked torque to the neck. Rotational G-forces spiked, risk of whiplash soared. Dr. Rojas grim-faced. Gangrene was the least of their worries. Footwork and mud, math mud, slip. Simulations, garden hose plus clay loam, revealed pit fighters lost 30% traction, whereas rim walkers adapted by digging toes. Medieval barefoot edict suddenly looked enlightened. Leather soles skated like banana peels, bare skin gripped. Nobody tell the minimalist shoe crowd they're copying 14th century divorce law. Myth busting. Corner myth. Cudgel blocks sack. Smash easily. High-speed tests showed oak deflected stone sacks only if intercept angle 30 degree. Anything wider glanced off and still clocked the head. Verdict: busted unless you fence like Obi-Wan. Myth: heavier husband always prevails. Velocity squared trumped mass. Greta, 60 kg, consistently outdamaged Luca, 85 kg, by exploiting arc length. Physics sides with the sling. Myth: 5-pound stone can't break bone. It can and did. Our ballistic gel, proxy skull, cracked at 4.1 ms. We stopped before, trying on actual craniums. Virtual pit, mocap, to metaverse, grad. Student Anika mapped motion capture data into a Unity sandbox. Twitch chat watched avatar Greta whirling like a Tasmanian spouse devil. We toggled variables, shorten skirt hem, swap in sandbag, deepen pit. Findings: every extra 10 cm of pit depth shaved 12% off Luca's upward reach. Sandbag: same mass, softer. Density: decreased peak head force by 28%, supporting town council minutes complaining about skull shards in spice stalls. VR spectators spammed heart emojis. Medieval bailiffs would have sold tickets. Injury ledger versus chronicle. Claims chronicles report around 17% fatality within 24 hours. Our models, factoring concussion, cervical injury, infection odds, suggested 10–15%. Close enough to nod at scribes, though Luca survived with ibuprofen and pizza. 10. Ethical debrief and therapist reaction. We invited a couples counselor to observe. Her notes: demonstration vividly underscores escalation cost. Sling symbolism could be repurposed. Clients decorate foam sacks with grievances, then throw them away, not at. She ordered a dozen miniature Schlagkissen for her office. Medieval weapons, the new stress balls. Turns out a flour sack arena delivered forces comparable to modern combat sports, minus cushy mats and plus tetanus. Scheidungskampf wasn't theatrical fluff. It was a high-probability concussion lottery baked into civic code. Next time, Part 8, we'll pivot from physics to food. Duel day concession stands, the economics of selling mulled wine beside mortal peril, and why one Würzburg baker marketed pit pretzels shaped like tiny nooses. Yes, really. Until then, keep your slings virtual, your cudgels padded, and your marital disputes dictionary-sized, not pit-sized. Sleep tight, preferably outside the sandbox. When commerce smelled blood, where crowds gather, hawkers swarm. Scheidungskampf might sound like one-off backyard carnage, yet dual day concessions became a semi-formal microeconomy, so lucrative that some city councils weighed the tax haul against the moral hazard of letting spouses concuss each other. Tonight, we'll nose through roasting smoke, tally pfennigs, meet pretzel magnates, and discover why civic treasurers secretly cheered every fractured collarbone. Market Square Makeover. Blueprint of a dual day fair picture dawn before the bout, cobblestones scrubbed, pit dug, wooden barricades hammered in place. Meanwhile, vendors jostle for pole position as if snagging front row at a Beyoncé concert. Municipal clerks chalk rent zones, each the width of a market bench. Sign a parchment, pay a coin, plant your stall. Prime spots hugged the barricade corners. Close enough for splash zone spectacle, far enough to avoid stray teeth. Secondary rows catered to faint-hearted spectators who preferred gossip and glühwein over gore. Permits cost 6 pfennigs beside the pit, 3 pfennigs in the second ring. Add a clean street surety of 1 goose, refundable if you swept blood. Spatter by dusk. City ledgers list dozens of unclaimed geese. Apparently sanitation duty lost charm after mulled wine 6. 2. The concession kingpins. Meet the culinary cast. Pretzel Paul, Kramer. Specialty. Oversized salt-crusted knots twisted into noose shapes. Grubenbresen, pit pretzels. Marketing genius. Bundled them on strings so spectators could wear snacks like edible necklaces, freeing hands for cheering. Slogan: hunger binds, love breaks, pretzel saves. Eleanor die Wurzerin, Eleanor the spice monger. Menu: cinnamon-laced apple fritters, fried in goose fat. A sensory wall that masked sweat and fear. Trick: sold victory sugar packets, tiny cones to sprinkle on fritters, only if your preferred spouse won. Superstition bumped sales even in draws. Nobody risked jinxing appeals. Jakob Fassbender, barrel tap baron. Commodity: warm spiced wine, clove, nutmeg, bitter orange. Ladled from older barrels. Innovation introduced deposits. Spectators paid extra for ceramic mugs embossed with a pit emblem, refunded half a pfennig when returned unbroken. City Council applauded less broken crockery. Jakob pocketed abandoned mugs as bonus inventory, all cream. Lutz and his relic wafers. Backstory. Former road peddler who claimed a saint's thumbone blessed his ginger wafers. Hook. Promised divine favor if you munched one before the verdict. Lost spouse. Obviously you hadn't eaten the wafer fast enough. Buy another on the way home. Price points. How much for a side of Schadenfreude? Chroniclers rarely list. Exact coins, yet scattered tallies, plus guild price caps let historians estimate. Adjusted for 14th century wages. One pit pretzel, 15 minutes of a journeyman's pay. A mug of spiced wine, 30 minutes. A hot fritter, stack, 45 minutes. Bundle, deals popped. Resin plus wine, P till death combo. Councils skimmed a 2 pfennig sales tax per barrel tapped, earmarked for poor relief. Ironic, since the event produced fresh widows qualifying for alms. The olfactory arena, why smell mattered. Medieval towns smelled of tanneries, latrines, and horse sweat. Duel promoters wanted festive ambiance, enter spices, nutmeg, cloaked metal tang, cinnamon conjured Christmas even in June. Recipes survive in Augsburg's Küchenbuch, c. and 1390. One entry dubs its topping Freudenstaub, joy dust, a vote of confidence in sugar's ability to distract from head wounds. Risk and regulation. Food safety before germ theory. Vendors boiling wine had to keep it simmering until judge's final word to prevent souring, written more for flavor than microbes. Pretzel salt quotas existed so spectators wouldn't shrivel tongues and faint. Dehydrated pass-outs blocked viewing lines. Goose fat fritter vats changed oil every third duel. Inspectors sniffed for rancid stench, though no one enforced midwinter. Punishment for poisoning was severe. If tainted snacks swayed outcome, e.g., underdog husband suddenly nauseous, vendor faced drowning barrel. Records list only 2 cases, both ended in acquittal when tasters claimed honest accident. 6. Betting booths and bites, gastronomy. Meats, gambling food. Stalls doubled as informal bookies. Pretzel pool accepted odds scribbled on parchment. Bettors stashed slips inside hollow pretzel loops, redeemable after verdict. A salted knot swinging from a belt telegraphed allegiance. Left hip for husband, right hip for wife. Wagers changed hands faster than money changes on pilgrimage trail. Council ordinances tried separating staple nourishment from idle wagering, but booths blurred categories. Sugar cone steaks looked like snacks. Fines rarely stuck. Bailiffs loved a flutter too. Pit pretzels. Anatomy of a viral carb. Why the noose shape. Folk psych layered meanings, memento mori, a wink at potential execution if the loser was judged perjurer. Interactive drama, spectators, tour, pretzel loops at climactic swings, snap, audible gasp enhancer, practicality, elongated loop, fit over wrists like bangles, leaving hands free. Recipe twist, extra lye dip, produced darker crust that matched packed earth pit. Surviving breadcrumbs found in Nördlingen cesspits confirm heavy alkali signature. Science meets snack law. Liquid courage, spices, spirits, and social noise. Warm wine served triple purpose, stave off chill, embolden heckling, and sanitize questionable barrels, alcohol plus boiling medieval mouthwash. Authorities capped sales after 3 barrels. Jakob Fassbender regularly miscounted, bribing clerks with complimentary cups. Drunk crowds roared louder, fueling fighters' adrenaline, a feedback loop of violence for profit. Food as propaganda. Guild branding and marital morals. Bakers Guild sponsored wheat buns shaped like tiny cudgels, a sly ad for their loaf mightier than sack motto. Spicers Guild donated saffron-tinted ribbons to tie wine mugs, ensuring every tilt of cup flashed guild colours. Butchers displayed cured sausages dubbed husband's hopes, sliced in half. Post-verdict if the man lost. Each guild weighed exposure versus dignity. None wanted pity stink if their members regularly lost duels. Marketing budgets waxed and waned with fighter win rates. C. Economics of misery counting. Coins and casualties. 1442, Würzburg. Ledger tallies 137 pfennigs in vendor rents, exceeding Pentecost fare by 14 pfennigs. Add beverage tax and goose sureties, civic purse bloomed. Moralists fumed, yet plague, war, and random famine taught councils pragmatism. Broken arms healed, empty treasuries didn't. But downturn came fast. Humanist preachers mocked snack profiteering, printing pamphlets that compared pit pretzels to Judas's silver. Sales dipped once annulment courts spread. Nothing kills an impulse buy like watching a judge sign a paper instead of a widow wail. By mid-1500s, Grubenbresen stalls pivoted to carnival jousts, leaving divorce duels to gather dust. Culinary afterlife, where the recipes went Franconian, not rolls, still twist dough into interlocking loops. Local folklore calls them Scheidungskampf, though bakers deny morbid roots. Spiced wine recipes survive as heiße Ehe, hot marriage, at Christmas markets, clove punch served in ceramic mugs shaped like little pits. Bavarian brewpubs occasionally feature a Scheidbock, malty Doppelbock poured only on Valentine's Day for ironic cheer. Food forgets little. Calories carry stories long after statutes crumble. Modern recreations, from food trucks to TikTok. 2021, Mainz street food. Fest, Chef Annika. Reuter riffed on pit pretzels by stuffing them with pulled pork dyed crimson. Blood oath. Sliders. Sold out in hours. Sack snack. Challenge. TikTokers bake mini ginger wafers, smash them mid-rant, then resolve arguments over crumbles. Historians cringe, but click like. Pop-up tavern, the Gruber and Goose, rotates through. German cities, menu boards quote dual proverbs, bartenders ring tiny anvils with each order. Crowds queue for selfies in a replica pit booth, mug of hot marriage in hand. Outro, appetite. Wetted, appetite sated. Duel day. Cuisine proves violence and vending have always walked arm in greasy arm. Next up, part 9 will clatter mugs. Aside and spotlight music, the ballads, drum beats and piping fanfares that turned marital litigation into halftime show. We'll unpack how one 3-note fiddle riff still lurks in modern football chants, because apparently everything circles back to hitting something. Until then, season your pretzels lightly, tip your mugmaster generously, and remember, whatever your argument, carbs win in the end. Sleep well, preferably far from frying oil and flying cudgels. When litigation went lyrical, court records capture who swung first. Street songs capture why folks cared. Scheidungskampf spilled into melody. The way spilled wine soaks a rush mat, quickly, irrevocably, and with a heady after-smell. Tonight, we'll follow the notes. From thudding pre-bout fanfares that rattled window shutters, through bawdy victory ballads scribbled on ale-stained parchment, all the way to modern football chants that still echo a 600-year-old three-note taunt. No pit to dig tonight, just grooves to carve. Strike up the scorn pipes. Music. Before the melee at sunup, magistrates needed to herd gawkers toward the pit and sinners toward repentance. Enter the Stadttrommler, town drummer, and Schandpfeifer, literally shame piper. Their job? Blast short, piercing motifs, signaling bring your coins and your conscience. Surviving notations in Bamberg's civic manuscript, Codex Musica, litigiosa show a 5-bar call nicknamed Der Eheschlag, the marriage smack. Imagine a snare and pipe riff halfway between a military reveille and a tavern roof-raising stomp. Tarat-tat, tarat-tat. Brass-game contemporary chronicler Ulrich von Eger wrote, "Upon that Brahm the geese honked, and housewives crossed themselves, for both profit and peril drew nigh." Pitside pulse instruments. Allowed and banned. Councils wanted hype but feared bedlam. Würzburg Statute 1391 itemizes approved instruments, frame drums, single skin, no jingles, less chance of thrown metal, bagpipes, mouth blown, restricted to 2 drones. Louder sets banned after a piper's bass drone spooked a horse that trampled the bread stall. Fiddles, gut-strung, volume-friendly, ideal for dirges once losers' heirs wept. Prohibited, trumpets, considered warlike, cymbals, too shrill, church bells, sacred only. Enforcement was lax. Smugglers hid tin whistles inside fur collars. The resulting soundscape was equal parts folk festival and doom clock. The 3-mood, score of a duel day, early morning, summon and morality, pipe and drum call, tempo brisk, minor mode chant from local monks, miserere cordis conjugum, have mercy on married hearts, mid-bout, rumble and roar. Drum rolls match each swing. Musicians sometimes pause on heavy strokes so the audience can hear a satisfying thunk. Kids join with whittled willow whistles. Pitch rises when blood shows, documented by horrified bishop visitors. Verdict and aftermath, dirge or Dionysus. If a spouse dies, single fiddle keens, crowd hums low drone. Vendors hush to save face. If both survive and verdict humiliates one, pipers blast shandhorn riff. 3 descending notes, a rhythmic raspberry older than the Bronx cheer. That descending triplet, Eleso Fay, birthed generations of taunts. Street football in Lübeck still hears kids jeering losers with La So Far, unaware they're quoting a 14th century shame horn. Ballads that bled. How news became earworms before broadsheets, itinerant singers were Reuters on foot. They'd watch a duel, roast storylines overnight, then serenade taverns by dusk. The formula headline verse, names, crime, location, blow by blow, quatrains, couplets ending on rhymed sound effects, sack, clack, moral stinger, a wry final couplet praising God or cheap ale. One preserved ballad, Der Grubenkuss, the pit kiss, recounts the Ulm double knockout. Greta's sack swung south to jaw, Conrad's cudgel north did gnaw, both fell. Flat? The crowd stood dumb. Love rose lame, but lies lay numb. Manuscripts show chord symbols for Dorian mode, moody yet danceable. Modern folk bands still cover it at Mittelalter festivals, adding bodhran drums for Celtic spice. Women with lutes, Men with lute egos, female minstrels, Spielweiber, capitalized on dual gossip. Society pigeonholed them as scandalous anyway. Why not sing scandals? Chronicles note Hedwig von Kellheim performing Zackschlag Singspiel, dressed in half bridal gown, half blood-red tunic. Men either threw coins or proposals. One jealous. Abbot banned her from cloister markets. She simply sang louder outside the gate, boosting sales. Male balladeers often flipped the script, praising noble husbands, mocking scheming wives. Audience tips revealed bias swings. Years with high female victory rates saw misogynist ditties flop. Commerce trumped chauvinism, proven market data scribbled in margins. 8 pfennigs earned singing Brigitta's triumph. Only 2 pfennigs for cuckold lament, a just repertoire. 6. Drums in the courtroom, rhythms as legal. Tech inside the council chamber, verdicts sometimes announced via a single drum smack. Longer rolls indicated appeals accepted, short snaps meant final judgment. Citizens hanging in alleyways could decode outcome without facing gore. This sonic shorthand birthed the later German idiom of einen Schlag wissen, to know in one hit. Knowledge landing like a drumbeat. After-party anthems, pub chants, and goosebone. Maracas victory feasts erupted in guild halls. Butchers clacked cleaned goosebones together, cheap percussion that served double duty, audible bragging and culinary recycling. Bakers pounded bench tops in polyrhythms matching the judge's earlier cadence. Musicologists tag these sessions as proto-stomp minus NYC garbage cans. Lyrics recycled dual punchlines, e.g., How in Gretel, call and response. Over decades, the phrase detached from source, becoming generic encouragement shouted at carnivals. Only archivists remember Gretel first swung a 5-pound stone. The Reformation remix, from pit hymns to pulpit. Hymns Luther's movement hijacked melodies for new theology. Reformers pasted religious verses onto familiar scandal tunes, reasoning, the devil need not own the best rhythms. Thus the pit riff, lasso far, morphed into a penitential Kyrie in Saxon hymnals. Same notes, different sins. Irony. Congregations sang ex-divorce taunts every Sunday, halo firmly on. Counter-Reformation. Jesuits retaliated, composing solemn motets quoting dual proverbs in Latin paraphrase abisso conjugi. The musical turf war proved Scheidungskampf, still sold tickets, spiritual or secular. Fading echoes, lingering earworms. By 1600, official duels died, music lingered. Street fiddlers kept marriage smack as generic brawl soundtrack, eventually feeding into soldier marching tunes. Ethnomusicologist Rosalia Beck traced a melodic line from Bamberg's Schandhorn riff to the Prussian infantry's Lügenmarsch, Liar's March, of 1813, tempo doubled, notes intact. Jump another century. That same 3-note descent pops in Bundesliga stadium chants whenever a striker dives and refs miss it. Crowd trombones bleat La So Far. 600 years of sonic side-eye. Hetty, 21st century resurgence. Playlists and Pit Talk Spotify playlist Cudgel Beats curates medieval drum loops remixed with trap hi-hats. Track 2, Sack Swing Lullaby, samples Goatskinned Frame. Drum cracks. Gruber Groove on TikTok. Creators duet with hurdy-gurdy riffs while acting out petty roommate arguments. Views approaching 7 million. Indie band lawsuits and Lullabies dropped an EP using translated pit ballads as lyrics. NPR called it Renaissance Emo. Algorithm loves a backstory. Mention divorce duel. Watch clicks soar. The pit is dead, the playlist thrives. Outro. Ears ring, story. Sing Scheidungskampf's melodies prove sound can outlive scars. 3 notes survive longer than oak cudgels, drums echo after pits fill, and a shame piper's toot still razzes soccer floppers on Saturday afternoons. Next up, Part 10 will shift from auditory to architectural archaeology. We'll tour the physical. Remnants, dual pits repurposed as wells, courthouse frescoes of sack wielders, and one Transylvanian cellar where historians found limestone ghosts of a rim track. Hard hats on, folks, we're digging again, literally this time. Until then, hum responsibly, tip your bagpiper, and if you hear lasso far behind you in a dark alley, well, maybe don't lie. Hard hats, soft hearts, scrolls crumble, and ballads fade, but rocks gossip forever. Long after Scheidungskampf slipped from statute books, its arenas lived second lives as wells, cesspits, storage vaults, even ersatz wine cellars. Archaeologists in reflective vests now tiptoe where bailiffs once barked verdicts, coaxing stories from lime-washed wall scars and rim grooves worn by anxious barefoot circling. Tonight, we trade parchment dust for chalk dust, touring the physical ghosts of divorce by combat. Bring a headlamp and mind the drop. Ghost pits beneath the marketplace, Rothenburg ob der Tauber, still boasts postcard half-timbers, but beneath the cobbles lurks a square cavity first charted in a 1384 tax map as Scheidgruber. When city engineers lifted slabs in 1997 to relay sewer lines, they hit oak planking blackened by centuries of muck. Dendro dates matched 14th century felling seasons. Depth, exactly an L and 2 hands. Regulation, men in a whole speck. Builders had later roofed it, punched a shaft and sold the rebrand as a public well. Tourists drew water for 400 years from a pit where couples once slugged futures apart. City Council politely fenced it, posted a discreet sign, historical shaft, no coin tossing. Every night someone still flings euros. Superstition mutates, not dies. Latrine layers and forensic. Dirt dig teams love old toilets. They preserve what more polite sites don't. In Würzburg, a cesspit adjoining the town hall revealed stratified sludge punctuated by a curious band of compact loam, mixed with straw and fragmented oak shavings. Chemical assays showed higher lime, lower phosphates, mismatch for fecal deposits. Soil micromorphology screamed backfilled arena floor. Above that stratum, a debris lens of chicken bones, charred pretzel crusts, and a lone pewter token stamped with 2 entwined cudgels. Guess which public spectacle happened the week that layer set. One graduate student counted slingstone pebbles, 13 smooth river cobbles in a space the size of a cloakroom. Probability of random disposal, near 0. Probability of frustrated. Rim fighter heaved ammo into the new latrine rather than carry it home. We're banking on that. Frescoed courtrooms. Violence in watercolor. Most duel arenas were temporary trenches, but municipal pride painted the drama onto plaster that lasted longer than marriage vows. In Rathaus Goslar, a 15th century fresco hides behind later coats of devotional blue. Infrared reflectography revealed twin silhouettes, one knee-deep in russet earth, cudgel raised, the other in a faded vermilion skirt, swinging what looks like a donut but resolves on close zoom into a stone-filled sack. For generations, docents told visitors the scene showed David and Goliath. Restoration chemist Clara Hübner peeled varnish and spotted a German caption once scraped nearly clean. Gott richt, wir schlagen. God judges we strike. Iconographers now scramble to relabel gift shop postcards. Old stock goes cheap on eBay. Mistaken theology sold at a discount. Collector's dream. Rim track in a Transylvanian Cella Sibiu, Hermannstadt, Romania, once a Saxon outpost, gives us the sharpest physical imprint. In 2016, a couple converting a wine bar hacked through a cellar wall, discovering a circular corridor grooved shin-deep in limestone. Laser scans mapped a perfect 3.3-meter ring with incremental divots at equal spans, likely footprints eroded by countless barefoot rotations. No central pit now, it was packed with rubble during Ottoman-era fortification works, but mineral halos betray soil once looser in the core. Local legend insists the cellar was an execution nook. Visiting Germanists nodded sagely and whispered, "Ehe Jagdgrube." Heritage ministries sealed the site behind plexiglass. Patrons sip Cabernet while staring at ghost track geometry, wondering why the floor feels like a slow carousel. Bistro renamed itself La Groapa, the pit. Marketing writes itself. Mason marks and divorce. Notches, medieval stonecutters signed work with personal runes. At least 6 pits show clusters of identical chisel glyphs, crossed sticks topped by a circle. Scholars call it the head and stick mark. It pops on arena curbstones in Frankfurt, Ulm, Augsburg. Possibly a specialist crew, call them Pit Brothers, subcontracted city to city whenever a dual docket stacked too high. Their rate sheet is lost, but wage rolls list bonuses for hazard masonry. Archaeologists found finger-width scorch scorings ending mid-curve, as if chisels jerked aside when overseer yelled, "Enough depth!" Efficiency carved in panic. Some glide notches host black wax residue, torches jammed into curb to illuminate evening bouts. Carbon-14 nails the residue to spring festivals, confirming that warm weather plus beer plus long daylight spelled premium ticket sales. Whispering walls. Acoustic reconstruction. Acousticians love enclosed rings. In 2022, Dr. Lydia Rojas, our Part 7 concussion guru moonlighting with a decibel meter, hauled speakers into the Rothenburg shaft. White noise bursts bounced off stone, revealing a resonance peak around 450 Hz, the frequency band of a bagpipe drone. Standing in the pit, she clapped. Reverberation lasted 0.6 seconds, perfect for amplifying shouts, but not so long that words blurred. Builders accidentally engineered an acoustic megaphone, or intentionally, bailiffs wanted every "I yield" to carry over the market hum. Reenactment troupes now queue for slot rentals. City council dithers over decibel bylaws. Heritage boards fear cosplay injuries. Historians secretly hope for new data recorded in hi-fi. Key: invisible ink in foundations. Bricklayers, sometimes brushed lime wash with secret inscriptions. DIY insurance policies asking saints for hazard pay. Ultraviolet sweeps in Regensburg flagged faint graphite beneath a staircase block. Sancta Walpurga, behüte uns vor wütigem Sackschlag. Saint Walpurga, protect us from furious sack blows. The stone sat below the former council chamber floor, the bailiff's path from office to arena, every step a whispered prayer. When wells remember, blood several cities repurposed dual pits into water sources. Hydrochemists sampling Augsburg's Sparkasse. Well found elevated iron oxide, trace rust from countless smashed oak hoops and nails tossed after events. Folklore blamed bloody water, but chemistry says iron leached from pit-reinforcing iron shoes. Citizens still refused to drink, opting for rain barrels. Reputation can poison faster than microbes. Drone mapping the buried rings, LiDAR drones. Flying grid patterns over Bavarian hamlets reveal faint, circular depressions where later layers settled differently. Soil once churned by duel crowds, compacts, less than untouched earth. Archaeologist overlays match depressions to absent plazas mentioned in council ledgers. One hamlet, Dittenheim, boasts no surviving record of Scheidungskampf. Drone topography says otherwise. Perfect ring, 20 meters, across, flanked by later filled latrines. Paper lies, dirt testifies. Preservation politics, how much blood in the brochure. Tourism boards squabble, promote the pits or keep them scholarly. Frankfurt updated its medieval walking tour to include divorce dual trench, filled, adding QR codes to CGI fly-throughs. Visitor numbers spiked, church groups complained of glorified domestic abuse. Council compromised. Family-friendly panels emphasize early female agency, downplay shattered jaws. Critics call it violence washing, supporters call it nuance. Heritage is negotiation with ghosts and school field trips. Igsadi VR sand between. Your toes photogrammetry teams stitched high-resolution scans of Sibiu's rim track into a unity experience. Slip-on goggles and your circling limestone ruts. Haptic soles vibrate when feet align with wear grooves. Option toggles, crowd noise recorded in anechoic chamber, modulated by pit acoustics. Academic reviewers adore the empathy immersion. Twitch streamers toggle sack view for comedic POV head bonk. We live in strange scholarship times. T. Lost forever, sites that got away. Freiburg's Karlskeller collapsed under 1834 brewery expansion. Workmen bulldozed what they called stupid square trench. No sketches survive. Vienna's Minorite Gardens paved over a suspected rim site for a Napoleonic parade ground. Asphalt now hides carbon shadows beyond reach. Halle an der Saale filled its dual moat to install a public pissoir. 19th century urban progress, sometimes literally flushed history. Painful lesson, archaeological record is chance plus timing. Every saved pit is a miracle of missed city budgets. Outro. Foundations laid, pits. Paid stones do what ballads can't. They stay put. Yet they too require interpreters, archaeologists who hear echo chambers, chemists who sniff iron ghosts, drone pilots who trace depressions like detective outlines. Scheidungskampf may be gone, but any city map scanned deeper than 2 meters starts humming the old tune. Rim groove here, torch scar there, and maybe an oak plank that once quivered under a sack swing. Part 11 will leave foundation dust behind and tackle legal afterlives, how dual verdict precedent sneaked into inheritance law, why early modern jurists cited pit cases to debate women's testimony, and which Enlightenment prankster forged a fake statute that fooled scholars for a century. Expect footnotes wielded like cudgels. Until then, tread lightly over cobblestones. You never know if a step echoes hollow. And if you drop a coin into a well with suspiciously square walls, listen for 2 splashes, one of water, one of history, winking back.